So let's start this video off with a moment of silence for all the blown accounts in the month of August. Let's just pour one out for the dead. Okay, so getting into the actual weekly analysis here, let's actually start with the weekly chart. Okay, first thing you should notice at the weekly chart is how far up in premium we are. There was not really much of a delivery on the weekly time frame for it to really be moving too high, right? We never retraced into this weekly fair value gap. So it is actually kind of a magnet right now that could either draw price down to it or really mess up price action somewhat on the daily time frame. On the daily chart, we are currently one, two, three, four times we have just respected this bullish daily fair value gap. So it's a PD array of high interest. So basically, Monday will be interesting to see how it opens. If we get a candle closure below this fair value gap, probably we go at least to this low. And if we're going there, to be honest, we're probably just gonna go to the weekly fair value gap, in my opinion, because this to me seems like some low resistance liquidity here, and because it's perfect, I think it is meant to be taken out eventually. However, price could, of course, easily also just react here and pump up again. You know, there are some equal highs that act as magnets. There is some low resistance liquidity here on the 1 hour chart as well that act as magnets for price to move up if it so wants to. So yeah, anyways, definitely quite neutral in terms of where we're at. However, Monday should reveal somewhat what the bias is, even though it's just a half day. But the rest of the week looks pretty good actually. Friday looks great with three red folder new. Well, it's an NFP. Oh, okay, so it's NFP on Friday, which means Thursday, even though it looks good, it's against my rules to trade that day, to be honest. However, I can still watch like for an eval account before 10 or before market open. I think it's okay to trade a little bit. Um because we do have some significant news happening before the market open. Now PMI, I don't know if it's gonna be of high impact. Probably, to be honest, I just haven't taken too many trades lately, so I want to trade more, but it's probably best to avoid Thursday because it's NFP the next day and it could just be generating liquidity for it. So your take profits might just not get, end up hitting. Wednesday looks like a decent day to trade after 10. Just look out for data high, data low. Tuesday, also the same thing, just trade after 10. Monday, of course, again, no trade day. It's bank holiday, I think, as well as it's a no news Monday, so just avoid it. Okay, back to the chart. Pretty interesting that the daily fair value gap and the 1 hour fair value gap that we marked in the previous video has been acting as support and resistance so far. So basically, if we get some candles on the 1 hour chart moving back below this range, basically, we could expect price to move down. I know this is like support and resistance kind of mindset here, but it works. So why fade it? You know, after that, as we discussed, price could go down to the weekly fair value gap. However, you wouldn't, or you shouldn't put all your eggs in that basket because it could easily be generating more and more liquidity for NFP, right? And just keep going up and maybe even go up and yeah. Uh Maybe take out the all-time highs again and come back down, or just sweep the equal highs and come back down, or not do any of that and react, you know, Basically, you should just always be open for anything, anything at all to happen because anything can happen. That's something I recently learned the past 2 months where, every time I was extremely confident in the draw on liquidity, it just didn't hit. Or price didn't even like give me a setup to it. So it wasn't too bad, but sometimes, you can get way too sure of something and you end up chasing, you know, plays or taking trades that probably aren't A plus. And yeah, that sort of conviction, although it's good when you're in winning trades, you should just know that it's not in your power. The market is not in your control, and it's more of a submitting process than it is, a forcing process, which I don't know if anyone needs to hear because for me, being prior to being a trader, a very hard worker who's just, always just pushed and pushed and pushed. It just that kind of a grinding mindset just does not work in trading. You have to just be submitting to the process. Know that it's not meant to work every time, but it will work over time if you have done your back testing, your research, and if your model really works. And you should be sure it works if you have back tested and you know made the changes necessary for it to work. Secondly, just make sure to, especially when we're going to the all-time highs, manage your risk better. So one thing that is very, very useful, especially at all-time highs, is, you know, let's say you win the first trade, right? You basically went in with full risk, right? The next trade, you would also just risk full, your full size. However, if you lose the next trade with full risk, right? The next trade, no matter what, has to be half the risk. From that point onwards, if that was a loss with half risk, you just move on to continuing risking half the size you normally trade with. However, if let's say you win the next trade with half risk, you are you basically have to switch back to full risk. All right. So I don't know if you understand for sure what it is I'm saying is, but basically it's to make sure that if you are on a losing streak, it has much smaller impact than your winning streaks. So this is just the protocol I've been forward testing, and it's kind of annoying and frustrating for sure. Um when you're doing like very 50-50, but or when you're winning more often, I guess. But when your win rate goes like basically 50% or even lower, this can actually turn your um yeah, it can actually turn your model profitable, this setup, because it doesn't really play on the quality of the setup, but it does play on the law of numbers, which assures that if you have, let's say if you're flipping a coin, right? Every time you have heads, you win. Every time you get tails, you lose. Basically, let's say you get heads 3 times, right? You're risking $100 per gamble, whatever, flip of a coin. Um, you're winning $100, but every time you're losing 3 times, yeah, you lost $100 on the first one, but the next two flips, you're only losing $50. So, if this compounds more and more, let's say you win five in a row, that's $500. Let's say you lose five in a row, that's only $350, I think. Um, Maybe less. Maybe it's $300 actually. Anyways, so it's quite a significant difference, with equal outcomes simply because of the controlling off risk. This should probably be a separate video, to be honest. I'll make a video on this, like discussing it further, um, with results and yeah, and the actual logic behind everything. But yeah, right now, to be honest, guys, like I haven't had the best couple of months. I had a really, really, really good May, April, June, but July and August, not that great. So I need to kind of work on my conviction and confidence myself as well before I wanna come back to teaching everyone. I get a lot of messages from people who want me to be their mentor, but I'm just gonna repeat this again. I'm just like a student, bro. I'm a student that wants to help you guys win without having to pay ridiculous amounts of money to, you know, quote unquote mentors who are just gonna give you like basic ICT knowledge for 5K, You don't have to do any of that. You guys are like way too attached to getting a mentor figure in your life because you don't have any confidence in yourself, and that's what you need to work on. And it's only gonna come through actual work, so just put it in, all right? Anyways, I wish you guys all the best for the week. I'll be posting some daily analysis as well as when I'm gonna be trading and when I'm not gonna be trading, in the trading schedule. And yeah, wish you guys all the best. Manage your risk, stick to your strategy, and you're gonna do fucking great.